9, text number 32. You know the verse, right? Fantastic. Mam hi partha vyapashritya ye pisyu papayo nayaha striyo vaishyastata shudras te piyanti param gatim mam hi partha vyapashritya ye pisyu papayo nayaha striyo vaishyastata shudras te piyanti param gatim. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. Purport: it is clearly declared here by the Supreme Lord that in devotional service there is no distinction between the lower and higher classes of people. In the material conception of life, there are such divisions, but for a person engaged in transcendental devotional service to the Lord, there is not. Everyone is eligible for the supreme destination. In Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.18, it is stated that even the lowest, who are called chandalas, or dog-eaters, can be purified by association with a pure devotee. Therefore, devotional service and the guidance of a pure devotee are so strong that there is no discrimination between the lower and higher classes of men, semicolon. Anyone can take to it. The most simple man, taking shelter of the pure devotee, can be purified by proper guidance. According to the different modes of material nature, men are classified in the mode of goodness, brahmanas; the mode of passion, kshatriyas, or administrators; the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, vaishyas, or merchants; and the mode of ignorance, shudras, or workers. Those lower than them are called chandalas, and they are born in sinful families. Generally, the association of those born in sinful families is not accepted by the higher classes. But the process of devotional service is so strong that the pure devotee of the Supreme Lord can enable people from all the lower classes to attain the highest perfection of life. This is possible only when one takes shelter of Krishna, as indicated here by the word vyapashritya. One has to take shelter completely of Krishna. Then one can become much greater than great jnanis and yogis. So this verse fits in very nicely with the previous verses. The previous verse was, even if one does the most abominable activity, if such a person is engaged in undivided devotional service, I consider that person saintly. And then the next is, I'll correct them. By my presence, by their mindfulness of me, I am keeping them in my mind. I'm in their heart, they're in my heart. I purify them. If there's a course correction needed, I'll correct it. Don't worry. So from that comes this. So there are persons who are not of high birth, because in using Prabhupada's metaphor, there's the stairway method and there's the elevator method. Simple one. He uses the example of the Empire State Building, because he was, speaking in New York. So you can climb up all the steps to get to the top floor of the Empire State Building. You might have a heart attack by the time you get there. But you can get to the top floor by walking up the stairway. They have to have a fire exit to the building. So you can go down the stairway and up the stairway. But you can also take the elevator, will take you to the top floor. And the other process, non-devotional process, that's a Vedic process, is gradual. And it has its benefits, for sure. The benefits, for sure, are gradual purification. Like really, really, really gradual purification, but, firm purification. And persons that observe those standards. We heard yesterday evening about the smartas. Smarta brahmanas, or those who follow fastidiously. They follow XYZ rules and regulations as best they can, completely. And for them, for the smartas, everything is about rules and regulations. And it's not, it's not wrong, because we also hear Prabhupada say, what is a definition of dharma? Simple one. Laws given by God. And a religious person, religion is laws given by God. And a religious person is follow the laws. Just like the state gives laws. And one who abides by the laws is a law-abiding citizen, a good citizen. One who breaks the laws is a criminal, or to be punished, subject to be punished by the government that creates the law that people are violating. And there's the law enforcement agency, and they're the ones that punish people. They apprehend and give punishment. So this is a place for criminals, the material world, Devidam, and the persons that don't abide by the laws. And those that do abide by the laws, there's elevation. There's a degree of freedom. There's more freedom for those that follow the laws than those who break the laws. There's more restriction for those that break the laws. There's degrees of breaking the law too. But if one's just restricted, like put under confinement or whatever, in different ways of bringing people who are law breakers into control, and the idea is to reform those tendencies. Anyway, generally it doesn't work that way. It works the other way. You put people together in jails and they associate with other criminals, so they become more criminal. It reinforces their criminal mentality. It doesn't reform them from the criminal mentality. So it's like the material world. You associate with materialists, you become a materialist. So the regulations, the smarta group of people, they like the regulations. And all religion has regulations. Say it negatively. That which doesn't have regulations is not a religion. All religions have some regulation. A little story. Some years ago, in the Tuaco temple, there was one of the congregation member girls was attending NYU, New York University. And it happened that one of the evenings that I was there for the Sunday program, she brought one of her friends from school, who was a Hasidic Jew, who came because he was, an open-minded Hasidic Jew, but, who wasn't about to leave his Hasidicism or Orthodox Jewish faith. But he was curious. So he attended the Sunday lecture, and he came to where I was after the lecture. And his first question was, are there rules? Are there laws? Because in the Jewish faith, there's laws. They study the scripture, the Torah, to understand the laws. And they read it in Hebrew. And, they're really, you see them, the Hasidic Jews, they're reading the scripture all the time. They're really very fastidious about it. And they follow. Now, some of the things that they follow are a little puzzling, to me at least. But, they're following, because that's what being a conservative or Orthodox Jew means. You follow the laws. So that was his first question. Are there laws that you're supposed to follow? And then what are they? So we have laws that we're supposed to follow. But the persons that are eligible for devotional service may be persons that don't follow. In fact, they're outlaws or chandalas. There's those that don't follow, the pancha ma, those that don't follow anything. They're not necessarily atheists, but they just don't follow anything. So that was an audience that Prabhupada had to address. Not atheistic per se, at least many of the young people he was addressing, because it was young people he was addressing initially at least, weren't following anything. And they were, in fact, rebellious. The counterculture audience was rebelling against authority because they didn't trust authority. There was a saying during my time, don't trust anyone over 35. They're the authority people, and they screwed up, and so you don't follow those people. Find your own way and all those kind of things. So that was his audience, but by he had faith in what he's writing here by giving association to such ungoverned people. They can become elevated. And how is it they can become elevated? What does elevation mean? And that's coming up at the end of this chapter, Manmana, Bhava Mad Bhakto. That's the final verse of this chapter. We're almost at the midway point of Bhagavad Gita. The end of chapter 9 is the midway point of Bhagavad Gita. And here, what Krishna is saying is those who will, Papa Yonayaha. Papa means sin. And Yonayaha means place of birth. Papa Yonayaha means born of a lower family. So, and then, in one sense, here's a little, everybody liked controversy, right? So in one sense, Prabhupada is taking this, and he presented Krishna consciousness to the world as kind of like an equal opportunity religion. No discrimination, race, color, creed, social, economic background, Papa Yoni, you name it. Everyone's eligible. What's the eligibility? Just be a spirit soul, that's all. It's pretty much everybody. You're eligible. And in that eligibility, with inside there's bhakti, and when there's association of bhakta with one who has bhakti inside, bhakti comes out. Not everyone's going to say yes, but the potential, the potency is there for bhakti to come out, for bhakti to arise from that spirit soul, that candidate. Everyone's a candidate because they're spirit souls, and he was giving. So it's the association of devotees. Sadhu Sangha is the catalyst that awakens bhakti. And then from Sadhu Sangha comes Bhajana Kriya, and then comes some rules. Some things you don't do because they're detrimental to bhakti. Some things you do because they enhance bhakti. And then you learn the do's and you avoid the don'ts, and it helps you make progress. But the essence is not the do's and the don'ts. Everything starts with Sadhu Sangha, and it continues with Sadhu Sangha, and in the stage of perfection, it's Sadhu Sangha. According to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to Sanatana Goswami, even in the topmost stages of bhakti, Sadhu Sangha is imperative, not optional. So Sadhu Sangha means simply you do with sadhus what sadhus do, and you serve them. That's Sadhu Sangha. And you hear from them, and you chant with them, and you remind one another about Krishna together. That's what we do. Because that awakens bhakti. When bhakti is awakened, it doesn't matter that. So this is the one side of this. You can say controversy, or not controversy, but little tension. Equal opportunity message. And then there's another side to this, that some people don't like this verse. Because especially modern people don't like this verse. Because it sounds discriminatory. You know, especially women. And the categories of papayoni, come on. I mean, men may also be born in, you know, a sinful family, and why are you singling out women? You know, that whole thing. Now, I didn't go through the commentary of our acharyas for two reasons. One is I just forgot because I was so busy doing what I'm doing. But the other is I thought about it, and, you know, they're addressing a different audience. Prabhupada is addressing today's audience, and it's not, doesn't have a shelf life. Each acharya has an audience, and he's addressing according to the audience. And our predecessor acharyas are certainly in terms of principle. That's not going to change. But the audience is not an audience that says, you know, what modern people think about what the role of women are. I mean, without going into it, just like what the role of abortion is. You know, women are big advocates for abortion rights because it's my body. Wait a minute. So I don't want to go into that topic. I'm just bringing it up. So don't ask about the abortion topic. But it's just like, it's another one of those things that's just not talked about. There's not even a thought of it. Or transgender people. What's in the Vedas about it? There's nothing in the Vedas about it because there was no even a concept about it. Nothing our acharyas wrote about transgender people. It just wasn't, whoa. So it wasn't an issue for those who are cultured. There's a role of male and female in family life, and they have their role in family life, and they serve each other in, you know, somewhat traditional ways, of course, customized to personalities, but somewhat traditional ways. And there's a purpose behind it. The purpose behind it, what's the purpose behind it? It's coming to the stage where love for Krishna is most enhanced. And if we stay within that norm of social roles or other roles and live our lives accordingly, then we're happy and progressive spiritually. So that's this other side. You know, the people don't like the verse. Or they don't understand it, so they don't like it. That's really what the situation is. Because the situation that Krishna, this is chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, and it's about bhakti. And the message is saying, the first part, you know, it's an equal opportunity system. Anybody. And those that are devotee women are, they transcend whatever the birth, just like devotee men that may be born wherever they're born. They transcend those confines. Their eligibility is equal. There's not greater accessibility to those that are born this way compared to those that are born that way. There may be more of an uphill climb for those that are not born in an elevated situation, and it may be more like dry grass igniting with fire if one has refined qualities and birth. There's less struggle involved. It's more simple. So go to the smarter people or the staircase people, the gradual elevation people. There's benefit. It's like, using that same metaphor, taking wet wood, making it dry before you try to throw it in the fire. You throw it in the fire, you make that a lot of smoke to make the wet wood dry. And it'll eventually dry, and then so forth and so on. So the emphasis in chapter 9 is on bhakti, and the flow has of its past 5-6 verses has been going from mixed towards unmixed devotion. And so is this verse. The prior qualification of birth, etc., prior qualification is not a consideration. It is the consideration then? The consideration is, as Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur titles this chapter, Ananya Bhakti, Yoga, undivided devotion. That's the criterion. That's the criterion. So the previous verse is those that do sudurachar. This verse is those that papayoni, they're qualified. Now smartas won't like it. They don't like the previous verse. They don't like this verse. But Krishna liked both of them. And if we understand the intention that Krishna is speaking, we will also appreciate and like them. Because the essence is not the non-essence. The essence is the essence. Material qualification, including high birth, because that's a material qualification. High education is a material qualification. Wealth, beauty, renunciation, it's a material qualification. Now, material qualifications can help. That's something that Prabhupada said about his Western audience. You know, one good thing about you people, the Western American people, they're very detached from family. That can be a problem. But it can be an asset. Because young people during Prabhupada's time very quickly took up Krishna consciousness in a very renounced way. Like, extremely renounced way. And some of the stories that you hear is like, wow. Really renounced. Amazing. But, you know, by Prabhupada's potency, the bhakti factor just lifted them up. And because they didn't have the anchors of worldly attachments, they could move quickly. Now, because they didn't have strong enough bhakti, they could also fall quickly. So that's something that Prabhupada described. This varnashram system is like a safety net. By safety net, he didn't explain, but supposing someone is practicing walking a tightrope. You know what a tightrope is? Yes? Okay. So it's good to have a net underneath, right? In case you slip, you don't crash. So some of these daredevil people that walk on a tightrope across Niagara Falls or something like that, like, they're crazy. But good to have a safety net, but they don't have. They, you know, if they fall, it's finished. So safety net is if you fall, you have something to go to. You don't go down crashing. You go to whatever was just before your bhakti life, which is, you know, a regulated or something dharmic, following codes of dharma life. So supposing, like, you know, the Orthodox Jewish person that spoke to me, that's what they have. They have the rules. They have the safety net. And they live by it. And they believe it. And it's their religion. And that's fine. It's fine. Unless they start getting into, like, fighting with other people because you don't do it my way. And that happens too. That's one of the risks. When one doesn't know the purpose behind it, or hasn't achieved it, or it's like, you know, far away from that purpose. So there is a purpose in the rules, and you know, the fruits of following those rules. It's elevated birth. But as Queen Kunti says, the fruits of that piety can be a big obstacle. Right? Jama Aishvarya Shruta Shri Bir Edamanavadak Puman. Persons that have that, they can't think of you without deviation because they're attached to the temporary and the fruits of their piety. It happens. No, it's not always. Just this morning I was hearing Prabhupada speak in Bombay about, I don't know the circumstance, but he mentioned recently, one of the life members, a very wealthy industrialist, jumped off and he was asking the name of the bridge, such and such bridge, and committed suicide. Although he was a wealthy industrialist. It just wasn't enough, and whatever, we don't know the circumstance. And he just moved on, but with the rest of the class. But his point was, achieving things of this world takes sacrifice, and generally it takes some piety to be able to achieve things of this world. But, with passion, it's never enough. It doesn't satisfy. It's not the purpose. Achieving things is not the purpose. No, we're in a world where we're encouraged to achieve things. It's not wrong to try to achieve things. But to make the achieving things the purpose, while forgetting what the real purpose is, that's a big problem. Then you flip it around. Supposing persons don't have those achievement things, but they have bhakti. That's good. That's good. That's the goal. And because those other things will fill in. Krishna will Chipram Bhavati Dharmatma. He'll correct the shortages, and the other verse that we heard about yesterday evening. He'll preserve what we have and carry what we lack. So don't worry about what you lack or what you have. Worry, you leave the worry department up to Krishna, and you take care of the bhakti department, and Krishna will help you in both departments. And that's chapter 9, Bhakti Yoga, front and center. There's just 2 more verses in the chapter, and the chapter closes with, always think of me, become my devotee. Important chapter. See if there's some discussion.
I have a question over Zoom, Maharaj.
Oh, great.
Can I ask, Prabhu?
Boy, you're really loud, too. Can you take your microphone a little further away, or just
Yes, Prabhu.
volume or something? Go ahead, speak.
Yes, Maharaj. So, Hare Krishna, Maharaj. I understand, as you explained, that irrespective of the birth and male or female, Bhakti has the power to deliver everyone. So that portion I understand. But I haven't ever clearly understood is why the position of a woman is described as sinful, papayona, or subservient or inferior to men. So I had 2 questions along those lines. First, do women have a varna and ashram, just like Kshatriya, Brahmana and all? And second, what is the sense in which scriptures describe them as inferior or sinful? Typically I've heard that they are emotional and therefore easily carried away. In that sense, they are less intelligent, but that doesn't really say they're less intelligent. Yeah, they have a weakness and emotional stuff, but not necessarily less intelligent. And objectively, when you look around the world, all kinds of occupation in this material world that men are doing, women are also increasingly picking up, even stuff which is like physically intensive, like army roles and all. So true, given their body types, they might have a more challenging battle to get to that level, just like in Bhakti. But they are capable of doing even tasks which are intellectually very challenging or physically challenging. So in what sense are they to be understood to be sinful or inferior or subservient to men?
That's why this second question is why I gave a short class, because I thought we'd have discussion. That's not going to be satisfying for some listeners. I'm anticipating. This is one of those topics that can go on and not end, and still, not satisfying everybody. Now, the first question is, the woman accepts the role of her father than her husband in terms of varnashram. just like, for example, just like Draupadi or Rukmini, they were princesses. They were daughters of kings or Kshatriyas. And they had Kshatriya prowess. I mean, the plan that Rukmini made for how, she got it down to the T. Like how Krishna could kidnap her, and then how he could avoid regrettable actions like killing what might be his future relatives if he came in and had a whole big showdown. So she's very diplomatic and very, socially sensitive, very intelligent, very keen, a Kshatriya lady. And, so back to your question, the role of women, generally speaking, in Vedic culture is their father and then their husband. And so they're not relegated to one of those four because they're taking the position of learning from and being protected by their father and then their husband and then their son. Now, there's family divisions, that's their father. So commonly, following their father, they would have a function or a role. But it's not always the case, just like some men who have a certain father aren't of the same nature as their father. Like, Vena's son, Vena, and Vena's father, Anga. The father and son were different. So there are exceptions, but that's, or Prahlad and his father, Hiranyakashipu. There's exceptions, but there's more the standard. The son or the daughter would accept the characteristics of their father, and be, in social designation, be considered like that, based upon their family. Although the rule has its exceptions, that's the general rule in Vedic culture, at least as I understand it. Then the second one is the sticky one. Now, there are, I've heard persons have sent to me podcasts where this topic is discussed. And I'll tell you from my audition, the answers are very colorful. It's like a rainbow. Every color in the rainbow is out there with the answer to this question. So I'm not likely going to supply a silver bullet answer that everyone's going to say, yeah, that's it. Got it. One type of answer is traditionally, Prabhupada would say, look at the history of philosophy, and the philosophers are not women, the philosophers are men. The rishis and so forth and so on. That doesn't mean that they didn't have their counterpart female assistants or female qualified people, but the writing of and establishing of doctrines and teachings and understandings and so forth, traditionally men. So now the comparison you're making is in modern times, because now women are given the roles, we find them in military, and in, you didn't mention it, but all kinds of fields, science and government and all kinds of fields. So what about the intelligence of those people? Well, obviously they have intelligence. They couldn't do what they're doing if they didn't have intelligence. But it's a different kind of intelligence. That's one of the principal arguments, one of the principal lines of reason is what's being spoken of is the less intelligent women, because you didn't bring it up, but it's, that's another one. And lower birth because they're in the subservient role. Now, when you become a devotee, that's good. That's exactly what Prabhupada was speaking about in the class this morning. worldly people, he was saying, they look at devotees and say, come on, you're teaching to become a slave? And he used the word slave several times. We're not going to become slaves. And he didn't quote the government person, I forget which one it was, who wrote a commentary on Bhagavad Gita when Krishna says, surrender to me. That's too much. That's too much. Can't ask for it. So here's what you do instead. He just would modify Krishna's words right in his Bhagavad Gita commentary. Radha Krishna, Dr. Radha Krishna. It's too much. He's asking too much. And then others would say, oh, you become a slave? What kind of religion is this? Become a slave? So because people look at the word become a servant of Krishna in a derogatory term. So for women to be subservient to looks like a derogatory social role. For worldly people, it's a derogatory social role. And for spiritual people, it's an elevated spiritual role. Being servant of others. Dasa, dasa, anudas. And so forth. So, it gets really confusing because of three things. Modern conceptions, material conceptions, and spiritual conceptions. And modern conceptions are really kind of messed up. And material conceptions is this, subservient idea. Don't be a slave. And because it's demeaning to be a servant. This is demeaning. Let me finish. I see your hand. Let me finish. Yeah. So, a lower birth is because the position by nature is subservient. Just like the Striyo Vaishyas tata Shudras, the Shudras are servants of the other classes, and Vaishyas are in that position also. Now, it doesn't speak about their intelligence capacity, it speaks about birth. But with birth, it's one of the fruits of piety, and a lower birth is less pious. So, like, for example, in the Vedic conception is, if a woman becomes very attached to her husband, in her next life she may become a male. And a man who is very attached to his wife in his next life may become a woman. So the man is to become attached to Guru and Krishna, and the wife is to be attached to husband and Guru and Krishna, through husband, Guru and Krishna, because that's who husband is attached to. So she takes on qualities. That's the Vedic picture. And, this discussion could go on for quite some time. Purnamasi has the microphone and wants to say something. It's on. No, but there are people online that need to hear. Okay.
Hello. Okay.
You're on.
Yeah. So sometime back I was hearing a lecture in which they were talking in Vedic times how the varna of the children that came from the mother. For example, I don't remember he gave two examples. One was about Ravan. Though the father is Brahmin, he's always referred to as Rakshas because the mother is Rakshas. So I'm trying to understand when you're saying the varna comes from
the same for
I don't remember the other one. Yeah.
Help me. Dhrita, Pandu, and Vidura. Vidura took on the status of his mother.
Correct. Oh, yes. He gave that example. Yes. Thank you.
Vidura. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. I stand corrected. So whoever was asking the previous question, Varna is determined by the status of the mother. That's correct. Yes. However, with Ravana, he there's some versions of Ramayan take it that he felt badly because he killed the son of a Brahmin. But more commonly, the conception is the son or the children take on the quality or qualification of the mother, the varna, the ashvarna of the mother. Very good. Thank you. You have something? Online.
3 questions.
Okay.
The first one, can you please help me understand how our Krishna would categorize great devotee Mirabai in regards to the verse 9.32?
Yeah, she's a great soul. That's how. She's in the stage of perfection because of her bhakti, regardless of her yoni, her birth. And others were great souls, regardless of their birth. Prahlad. And Janava Devi, and so forth.
I was asked by my friend that why a woman after marriage had to change her gotram and surname, which successively goes to the children. Kindly help understand.
It's similar to Purnamasi's comment, and mine. The mother, the wife, takes on the characteristics of the husband, and so that it follows, and then the children follow the characteristics of father and mother, or mother. That follows. It's just a social system that's conducive for God consciousness.
What does it mean to follow the instruction of acharyas? The same acharya might give different approaches to the same problem at different times.
Yeah. It's principle based, not detail. Follow, and if you don't have someone who you have taken shelter of, then you're likely to become confused. Because it's true. Different acharyas will have different approaches to the same situation. And even one acharya may have different approaches at different times to a similar situation. So it's important, more than important, it's vital to have shelter. And if one loses that shelter, then you're certain to be confused.
Same person is asking. Talking about authority, Srila Prabhupada noted that there is a benefit in chastisement.
Yeah.
Tadena bhavo gunaha. How must senior devotees approach this idea? Is it possible the student might get a bit disoriented? Does earned reverence have a small amount of fear element?
Yes. But if they're yes to all of her questions, or his questions, but therefore discipline requires the preceding quality of love. Before discipline comes love. And then when discipline comes, the person who is on the receiving end of discipline understands it's coming from love, a loving regard for the other person. And from the side of the person that may have that relationship, they at least it's my nature to use that principle of discipline sparingly, because the nature of our times is people are really sensitive to being disciplined. So use it sparingly. But different personalities have different traits, and they may use it, laughingly and lovingly, but consistently. Tamal Krishna Maharaj is one such person. in our recent times anyway. He was like, very, very disciplined person. And he didn't mind using discipline in his relationships with his disciples and those who he was close to. But it was also always with affection. And people knew that. Some people didn't know that, and they, recoiled. They ran the other way, and they didn't like him. And he knew that would happen, but he had his personality and his style. So anyway, there's variety out there in the spiritual world as well as the material world. Go ahead.
The person is saying, please mention my name. His name is Sundara Dinakar.
Okay.
Another question, Maharaj. Maharaj, if a woman, question in YouTube, if a woman instead of getting attracted to her husband, she can develop attraction to Guru and Krishna, what is recommended between husband and Krishna?
Well, that's what I'm not sure what the question is saying. And so, attraction to Guru and Krishna depends on what that attraction is, on the material or spiritual foundation. And so that's part of my uncertainty, the nature of the question. But the relationship of the husband to the spiritual master doesn't need to change. And, the spiritual master to the wife of somebody, that's very delicate. So accepting the affection of the wife for the guru, but making sure that the husband, wife's affection for the husband is nourished and encouraged. Now, there's different things out there these days. I mean, there's different things in the world. In America and in India and in China, it's a whole other story too. Just because in thinking of answering this question, because there may be at least one or two devotees from China hearing this class, for your information, devotees, most of the devotees, maybe 90% of the devotees, initiated devotees in China are women. And of those, most of them who are married to men who are not devotees. So those who are women in China that have such a situation, part of the problem is making that balancing act between their devotion and spiritual life and their grihastha ashram. And, irritating the husbands of those women who are devotees can be a big problem for those women devotees and for the yatra. So it's a message that those who are senior devotees looking at the yatra to help encourage and support the importance of having proper relationships in the family, not just, the wife to the guru. And kind of the husband's over there, the children are over there, and they're kind of, disconnected from husband. And anyway, it's very imbalancing and troublesome. So back to this statement, there's different things out there, how that works. So a lot of it depends upon the dynamics and the particulars of the situation to answer a question. But there are principles. A wife should not be aloof from husband and family. That's having strong affinity for Guru and Krishna relation, that's good. And Guru and Krishna will encourage strong connection with family. And as much as is reasonable, because, again, there's so many things out there. So many things out there. So the long-term challenge is training people so that they're wholesome and they can have wholesome relationships, and then help, with other members of the community and within their families have wholesome relationships, and that's a Kali Yuga challenge. Next question.
The person is writing, the above question is in the context of gradual elevation from woman to men, then to devotee.
I'm not sure what that means. Can we go on to the next question?
Yes. The next question is, as a clarification to what Maharaj said in response to my question, the person who asked the first question, why women are inferior, Maharaj said.
So that the Zoom call?
Yes,
Yeah.
Maharaj. Maharaj said women have different intelligence than men. Can you please clarify what you were alluding to?
I'm not sure.
By
I
different-
don't know if I said women have different intelligence than men. I don't know if that's what I said. I don't recall having said that. It's not how I think. All I said was, and the main thing that I said was that Prabhupada made remark that philosophers and theologians and people like that in the past traditionally are men. There's obviously non-traditional, but traditionally are men. And that, so, but that's material intelligence. And these days women can have the same material intelligence in science and medicine and you name it, engineering, and they have the same faculties that men have or superior. So no problem with the material intelligence side. Material intelligence side. Huh? Okay. So you're asking for clarification of something that I said that I don't recall having said.
Oh, okay. I might have misheard you, Maharaj. I thought in response to saying inferior intelligence, I thought you made a point about different, but perhaps I misheard.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Why some souls reject immediately after they got even the best message from the person who forces, gave trouble to them many times?
Ask the person who's sending that message to rephrase the question because it's not clear.
Right. Could you, it's anonymous question, so could you
Well,
please,
whoever sent it can send it again.
okay, could you please rephrase the question?
Yeah, thanks. How are we doing? Anything more? Anything in the room? Do you know that verse from Bhagavad Gita? Do you know the verse? When we were reciting the verse, did you already know the verse without looking at the book? Yes? At the end, can I ask you to recite it for us? Okay, go ahead. Yes. Yes, yes. There's different varnas. One of the examples that I heard Prabhupada speak maybe 10 times was one time when he was in Ahmedabad. He saw a rickshawala, and he was pulling a load, and on top of the load was his wife, and beside the wife was the child. So the wife was serving the husband, and they were taking care of their child, and that was their family life, and they were satisfied because they were living. Now, whether that rickshawala was giving spiritual guidance to his wife or not, probably not. But she was subservient to her husband because let's just assume he was a good husband. He was a good man, or something like that. So she was following her dharma as a wife. So your question is supposing the husband is not giving spiritual guidance. It doesn't change the principle, but one will need such a woman that has a husband that doesn't provide spiritual guidance, needs to find spiritual guidance. That's maybe where this other question is, where there's a woman that is not feeling the same way towards her husband as she feels shelter in Guru and Krishna. Maybe that's what that question was about. I don't know. It doesn't change the social role. And as that woman then becomes spiritually situated, by her being spiritually situated, she can help, indirectly or subliminally help her husband become spiritually elevated by her spiritual qualities. But it will be enhanced by her taking her social role and, being the spiritual person that she is and receiving spiritual nourishment from sources she's receiving, and have some spiritual input into the family. And it's from that position that a wife or a mother helps the family in that role, in that mood. Okay? Okay. I think we're done. You have something? No? Okay. I think we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki? Jai.